For more than 55 years, Thunder Bay Hydraulics has helped keep critical equipment running through expert hydraulic cylinder repair and manufacturing. With in-house engineering, precision machining, and decades of real-world experience, their team solves tough hydraulic challenges for some of Canada's most demanding industries. Their mission is simple: a relentless pursuit of zero downtime. Learn more at www.thunderbayhydraulics.com.
We need to get rid of the idea that strategy is something for the boardroom. We also need to get rid of the idea that strategy is something for consultants. But it's a competence that organizations should develop, and individuals as well.
The great Mark Cuban once said, "Business happens over years and years. Value is measured in the total upside of a business relationship, not by how much you squeezed out in any one deal." And we couldn't agree more. This is the Business Development Podcast, based in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and broadcasting to the world. You'll get expert business development advice, tips and experiences, and you'll hear interviews with business owners, CEOs, and business development reps. You'll get actionable advice on how to grow business. Brought to you by Capital Business Development, capitalbd.ca. Let's do it. Welcome to the Business Development Podcast. And now your expert host, Kelly Kennedy.
Hello, welcome to episode 332 of the Business Development Podcast. And today it is my absolute pleasure to bring you Jeroen Kraaijenbrink. Jeroen is a strategy expert, educator, and author who helps leaders cut through complexity and turn vision into reality. With over 20 years of experience at the crossroads of business and academia, his work draws from cognitive psychology, systems thinking, and human development, allowing him to guide organizations through meaningful strategy design that sticks. As co-founder of Strategy Inc. and author of 7 widely respected books, he is a trusted voice for executives looking to lead with clarity and purpose. Jeroen doesn't just deal in generic frameworks or buzzwords. He brings strategy back to what matters: people, priorities, and progress. His no-nonsense, human-first approach helps leaders build strategies their teams believe in and act on. If you're ready to stop talking about strategy and start making it work, Jeroen is the partner you want in your corner. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Jeroen. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Kelly, for the wonderful introduction. So let's stop it here now. This was good. It can't get better.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. 7 books in like no time flat. Hey, like you authored your first book in 2015. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct.
Wow. That is an incredible cadence. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
What, why the passion for so many books in such a short period of time?
I think the real answer is I need to write in order to clarify my own thoughts. I think that's the big pattern in everything I've been doing through my academic career, but also today, and whether it's books, articles for Forbes, posts for LinkedIn. I need to write things down to clarify my own thoughts. And I think that's how these books come up. Part of it is so clarifying my own thoughts, and part of it is also being dissatisfied with the books out there. I know there's kind of unlimited books out there, and even on strategy.
Yeah.
But not exactly as how I like them to be, not as practical, not as useful as I think they could be. So I see an opportunity for something that is new, that's different. Yeah, and I said I need the writing for myself as well.
I absolutely love that. Honestly, a little bit. As an aspiring author myself, I haven't written anything yet, but it's in my to-do plans. I'm going to write a book on business development here when I can get around to it. But I absolutely love interviewing authors. And as we talked ahead of the show, I have only interviewed really one other guest in well over 300 episodes where we really dove deep on strategy and execution, and that is Monty Pedersen. And you mentioned that you actually know him.
Yeah, quite well. Yes.
That's incredible. Yeah, I really enjoyed meeting him and speaking with him as well. Jeroen, how did you end up on this path? You're an author, an educator, an academic, and an entrepreneur. Like, incredible trifecta. But please do, take us back to the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Did you always think you would be on this path?
Oh, not at all. So this is not by design, not by plan, which is kind of reflecting a bit how I look at strategy, but we get to that later on, I think. I think if I look at my entire career, I've always just looked at, okay, what's the next step? And then mostly intuitively follow like the next step that makes sense to me. So as a metaphor, and the same metaphor I also use to describe strategy, it's surfing. You have some idea on where you want to go or what you want to do, but you're very dependent on the next wave. And the only way to kind of make progress is jump on the next wave. And that's also how I see my career is even when I was still at college, then there's a next opportunity. Or when I was a student, at the end of my studies, there came the opportunity to do a PhD. I had never thought about that before, but I kind of liked doing my master thesis, and my professor kind of liked what I did. So there was an opportunity. And then I said, okay, why not? So why not? That's, I think, the main theme.
Yeah.
And from that, I got to a tenured position as an assistant and as associate professor. Also not really by thinking a lot about this up front, but more like, yeah, why not? It seems like a good next step. It helps me enrich my competencies. It helps me it sounds interesting. So yeah, let's just dive into it. And from there on, I think that's always how it has been, is after a while, I got a bit frightened, like, okay, if this is my career, if I'm a professor by, I don't know, 35, and will remain so the rest of my life, is that all? Is that everything there is? So some dissatisfactions there in terms of how I looked at my career, and I wanted to have a bit more of a real impact on the real world. So thought, okay, why don't I go into consulting? I did not really want to go into one of the big consultancy firms, which I probably couldn't because I was already too opinionated by teaching strategy for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So I basically declared myself a consultant, got my first client, my second client, and so on. And while doing that, and even already while teaching, I became also kind of dissatisfied with what I was teaching. So I was teaching from the typical standard strategy textbooks with kind of a new model on every page, the 5 forces framework, a D-step, a SWOT, a balanced scorecard, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And increasingly I was wondering, like, what's the point? What's the use of this? How is this really going to help managers, leaders, organizations to actually develop and implement strategy? So, and that kind of looking critically at the status quo has also been a main theme in everything I've been doing ever since. And then while based on the research, based on my teaching, based on the consulting, I kind of figured out like there's room for improvement. There should be other ways of doing this. And that became my first book, which in the end was published in 2015. Yeah, so that's how my career has gone. So I started as an academic for a long time, and then kind of gradually faded in, faded out of the university, more into business as a consultant. Yeah. I've done that. I'm still doing some of that. And the most recent step has been, I think, to become truly an entrepreneur. I think being an independent consultant is kind of entrepreneurial as well.
You bet it is. Yeah.
But it's a one-person game, so it's not really kind of scaling. It's make sure you get your clients, your revenues, and do your job. But since 2 years, I've joined. I've created a company together with Timothy Teriyaki, Strategy Inc., with really the intention, okay, let's join forces and make this much bigger than the two of us can do alone, and turn this into an actual company an actual business. And the one thing we started with is teaching other consultants. So my focus has always been more on the front side, on the strategy development. Tim's focus more on the implementation side.
Yeah.
Both of us having this very human-centered approach that you already referred to in the intro. And then we decided, okay, let's create a course for strategy. So seasoned, senior experienced strategy consultants. Ran it a couple of times, and kind of that's where we are now. And currently we're very hard working on launching our next big product, which is the Big Five of strategy, which is a competency framework for individuals. So the whole idea, and that you can see even in my books, is the whole idea is we need to get rid of the idea that strategy is something for the boardroom. We also need to get rid of the idea that strategy is something for consultants. But it's a competence that organizations should develop, and individuals as well. So the next big thing we focus on, and that's the real scalable product, is an assessment where individuals like yourself, like our listeners, like everyone, can assess their own strategic competencies, and from there on kind of build a roadmap on where does that put them in terms of their career, how can they develop that. So that's interesting, almost kind of not back full cycle, but one thing we did for that, or I did for that, is a pretty large scale study. So I could use my research skills again, did my statistics, my tests, but now with much more enthusiasm, because it was not just for writing an academic paper and hoping for citations, but for developing and testing an assessment instrument that actually makes a difference in practice.
Wow.
So that's how I've been kind of building and using so strategy has been a theme, but then research, consulting, writing, the different skill sets around that, and they are combined in what I currently do with our company, Strategy Inc.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Oh, I can't wait to get back to that, because now you got me very curious. What does strategy mean on an individual and employee level? I'm excited. I can't wait to learn a little bit more about that. But one of the questions that I had just kind of in this conversation, I think you're the first guest that we've had that has come from a strictly academic background and then transitioned into entrepreneurship to put those skills to the true test. And I absolutely love that. And one of the questions that I have is, did you find that the skills that you were teaching in university were transitioning into the real world of business when you finally did make that transition? Was it like, or were you very surprised that there were a lot of skills that you had to learn outside of the classroom?
The skills that I was teaching, not. And that was my frustration. Like, hey, what am I teaching here? How does this apply in the real world? Mm-hmm. Because it's far too analytical, far too simplistic, and a few other things. The skills that I had developed, first being a PhD student and then being a professor, surprisingly applicable. And that's been my interesting experience, even though let's say the academic label may not necessarily help. At least not in the Netherlands where I'm from and where I'm living. And I know in some countries, being a PhD really helps as a consultant.
Yeah.
In the Netherlands, it rather hurts than helps, because you're assumed to be theoretical and unpractical.
Mm-hmm.
But the skills that I learned, especially like teaching, but also research, I use them every day. I think if you look at what I write, even if it's just the simple short post on LinkedIn, it's teaching, it's educating.
Yes.
It's simplifying complex material in a way that people can understand it and can apply it as well. So the teaching skill is, I think it's core to what I'm doing also as a consultant. So the way I look at consulting is a very developmental approach to consulting, which is actually very much a teaching and a coaching approach to consulting.
I love it.
And the research part as well, and not just what I just mentioned, like for the development of this Big Five of strategy framework, we've actually conducted a large-scale study with over 1,000 professionals. So the statistics, the conceptual framework development, all of those skills were extremely relevant, because we wanted to build a framework that is not just nice looking and simplistic, but so thoroughly founded in both the conceptual literature, but also empirically tested. So those skills have been very useful. But also more generally, if I look at what strategy is and what it takes to kind of develop a strategy for a company or with a company, that's also quite similar to, let's say, qualitative inductive research, where if you do as a qualitative researcher, you kind of jump into a field, you gather lots of unstructured data, you do interviews, you get a very rich picture of reality. That's the whole idea of doing qualitative research. Strategy is exactly the same. When I work with a client, my task is to develop this kind of high density, very detailed picture of the company, like where they stand, what they want, where they want to go, all of the developments around them. So really immerse myself into the company and then see patterns, make the connections, connect the dots. So those research skills are extremely relevant as a strategist, as a strategy consultant.
Yes, yes. I love the fact, and I kind of hit on it earlier, just the fact that you're doing more of teaching, right? As a consultant, you're trying to set them up for long-term success. And it's something that I kind of realized in my own entrepreneurship journey when I started out as a business developer. I was really just like doing that work for them. I was doing all the work and saying, you know what, you stand back, I'll come in, I'll facilitate your program for you. We'll call you in when the meeting's going to work great. And they were happy. But the problem is that it would end. And inevitably your contracts come to an end. And that whole machine that you helped create grinds to a halt because the right things haven't typically been put in place to keep it going at the same pace that you were working. And so what we've found throughout, the transition of our company is same thing. We're going to more of a coaching, training, and teaching model of our consulting because it sets them up for long-term success. And what we're finding too is those tools are getting better for them to use. And so companies are becoming better and better able to manage their own programs internally using tools like AI and things like that to help streamline those processes. And I think as we move forward, consulting as we move forward into 2026 and beyond is going to start to transition to a less of I do it for you to more of a let me teach and stand in your corner and lift you up and help you figure out how to do that yourself. And I love that you touched on that because it sounds like you guys are going through a very similar transition on your own.
Yeah, that's why we focus on not even a transition. It has always been, I think, our focus, but now even more explicitly so, is because we're not fully moving away from consulting, but our main focus is now competence building, which it's really teaching, if you like. Beyond that, though, it's not just the way we look at it, it's assessment. So assess, develop, and embed. So first make sure that people understand where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, so which competencies they already have, which competencies not. And then at every level, departments, teams, individuals, entire organization, then help them develop. Of course, you will always have your weak spots and your strength, and the idea is not that you need to develop all of them.
Yeah.
But at least to some minimum level. So it's about leveraging your strength and kind of fixing your main weaknesses, because they may really become a problem if you don't work on them. But then the final step there is embed this into your ways of working. So in the end, and that's the big consulting work, is helping organizations transform in a way that this kind of decentralized approach to strategy, where people have developed or they have their individual strategy competencies, but also have the responsibility and the freedom and the tools and resources to actually apply this and use this. Because if you don't change that, it's nice. We can sell assessments, we can sell trainings, but nothing really changes. So you need to help the company transform their processes, their ways of working, job descriptions, profiles. So the whole governance and structure and processes of an organization need to fit to actually develop this strategic competency as an organization.
Interesting. Okay, so let's lead into that because you had led into the fact that strategy isn't just a top-down model. It shouldn't just be coming from the CEOs and the executives. Strategy needs to be a company-wide initiative, essentially. But we haven't been empowering our employees to be strategists, right? At least not in North America.
No, same here.
Yeah, it's very much typically a top-down. The executive team comes out, we came to this conclusion, this is what we're implementing, and they just say, here's what we're doing, do it. And as we talked about earlier, I know when I was talking with Monty, for instance, he was saying that like most strategies fail. Like 60 to 90% of strategies fail to be executed correctly or properly. So obviously that system doesn't work very well.
Yeah, and yet we keep on doing this. It's kind of a rain dance. We have our offsites, we do our brown paper sessions, we do our SWOTs, we are energetic and have a lot of fun, and then we go back to work and nothing changes. And I know this is exaggerated. It's not always like that. There are many much better examples, but for the bulk of the organizations, I think strategy is still something similar to that. It's exceptional. It's irregular. It's not part of the day-to-day business. It's literally separated by going to some nice resort, while our approach to strategy is a much more mundane way of looking at it. It's yet another business process. It needs to be yet another business process, which it currently isn't. And it can't be, because there's no place on this planet where you can actually learn how to do this.
Yeah.
Because I think if you look at the books, the education programs, it's still this old-fashioned approach that we're teaching for 50 years. Some of the tools are new. So we have our blue ocean strategy, we have our business model canvas, but the essence is still very much the same.
What I've always found really interesting about my plans, because I really only speak to my own, is that they rarely go to plan. I can sit down and I can write a 3-year plan or a 1-year plan or a 5-year plan. And I think the problem with these plans is that I don't have all of the information in the moment, right? I can't see the future. And what I typically find is that the best opportunities that come to my business, like the wave that you mentioned earlier, I couldn't see it coming, right? You can't see it until it shows up right in front of you. And so I found that, with Capital, with this podcast, really none of the big changes that have happened, with this show or with my company were in the plans. They just ended up being really great opportunities that I was in the right place at the right time and I could just say yes to. And so it's kind of skewed maybe my view on planning and strategy, just because maybe so many times I could even at the time, had I had all the information, I'm not sure I could have predicted the outcome that actually happened.
Yeah, and there's a balance here, because kind of fully doing away with the whole planning, then we're back at square one. Because if you look at the history of strategy, the whole point of strategy is to bring some stability in uncertain times, which is very fascinating, because if you look at scientific articles from 50 years ago, they have titles like Planning in the Age of Uncertainty, like as if they have been written today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
So the whole point of strategy is kind of giving this long-term vision, view, stability, of course, knowing that the real world is changing as well and that things won't go. But don't think the plan is still quite important, not because you will stick to it, but I think what you just said is kind of, I was sort of at the right place at the right time, or you see the opportunities. That's not a coincidence. It's not luck. It's because you have some idea in mind of where you want to go, that you see the opportunity. And you need to have the intention, you need to have the idea, you need to have the ambition in order to see the opportunity. And I think that's where having a strategic plan is still very important, because then you can, it sets your mind on a certain direction.
Yeah.
And it will help you recognize an opportunity as an opportunity and not as a deviation or as something that even goes unnoticed.
Quick pause here, and thank you for tuning in and supporting the show. I want to recognize Hyperfab, a Canadian precision fabrication company built by the team behind Hypervac Technologies, supporting projects in both Canada and the United States. They focus on high-quality sheet metal, fast turnaround, and solving complex fabrication challenges when it matters most. Hyperfab is proud to be our title sponsor for 2026. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the show. Interesting. Okay, so one of the things that's coming to my mind right now is strategy then a mindset?
That's a philosophical question.
Yeah.
I think, but largely it's mindset and skill. I would think so. Mindset, indeed, a way of thinking. And if you look in the work on individual competencies, it's very often about strategic thinking, which is largely about mindset, is being able to look differently at the reality, look more at the bigger picture, look at the
Yeah.
long term, rather than just being absorbed with the day-to-day details. But it's not just that. So it is mindset, but also ability to actually act on what you see.
Yeah.
So the ability to get others involved, to motivate others, to align their interest, their stakes, their resources, and also plain execution skills. It's kind of action planning, resource allocation, that as well. Plus the overall ability to adapt. And what I'm saying now, it's largely kind of in the big picture, exactly the framework we've been developing. Like, what are the competencies that people need in order to be called strategic? So what is strategicness of an individual?
Yeah, like how do you measure that? What does that mean?
How do you measure that? How do you define it? What does it mean? And that has been the interesting start of this whole journey on what we call the Big Five of strategy, is to define that and develop a structure, systematic model that captures what these competencies are, because it's not there. It's not out there.
Yeah. Yeah, like I wouldn't know how to sit down in a boardroom. And even after, let's call it an hour-long conversation, I wouldn't be able to say, yeah, this person's a 9 out of 10 out of strategy, right? Like I don't know what the measure is. I've never seen anything like it.
No, there isn't. Until we have developed it now. Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, no, it's really interesting. It's funny because I like to try to think that I can prepare for the future, right? I like to think I can.
Yeah. You need to do the assessment then once it's ready.
Me and my fiance were sitting down at the table not 3 weeks ago. And what we were trying to understand was, what are the implications of AI going to mean when it's 1,000 times more powerful? Because what I'd done a show a little while before, and one of the things that had come up was that AI was doubling in power every 6 months. And basically that it was going to be 1,000 times more powerful than ChatGPT version 1 in 2023 by 2028. Mm-hmm. So 1,000 times more powerful AI in 2028 than what existed beginning of 2023, which was my very first experience with any type of AI chatbot, essentially, large language model. And we were trying to figure out, because we have four little boys. We're like, well, how do we prepare them for that future? Because I was thinking at the time, when the iPhone came out, as a great example, we weren't thinking about what you would use an iPhone for. I remember seeing the commercial, or it was on YouTube, I think, at the time, watching the release. And it comes out and he's like, it's a phone and it's an iPod. It's a phone and it's an iPod, right? Like we don't even use a phone for an iPod anymore. We use it, for streaming services, for YouTube, for every app you can imagine, for business, for banking. Like, at the time, we could not see, even though the tool was right there, it was being shown to us. This tool hasn't changed much in the past, let's call it 20 years. But at the time, we couldn't imagine what that was actually going to mean for us today. And I think AI is that too. And while we can see it for maybe the tools we use it for today, the true use case of it is going to be almost unbelievable or unimaginable from what we can imagine today, right? And so we were trying to do that exercise and a little bit of strategy to it, but just trying to understand, like, what does that mean for day-to-day life? What does that mean for business? What does that mean for our business? And I know I'm not alone in this. There's a lot of business owners right now thinking, holy crap, like, what does this massive shift coming, not 4 years from today, what is that going to mean for me and my business? How do we strategize for a world that we can't see, and yet we know it's coming at us like a freight train?
Yeah, I think once again, the answer is build the strategic competencies. And that this is why, and I think that has always been relevant, but even more so today. If you look in the, a little bit of a sidetrack, then I get back to to the topic. If you look in the history of strategy as a research field, one of the dominant theories is what is called the resource-based view. is basically his very simple idea is you need unique, valuable, hard to imitate resources to be successful, to have a competitive advantage. Simple idea. The problem, if you really look at like that, is it's a very static thing, and you have certain resources, and until someone else has them as well. That has turned into a more dynamic, knowledge-based view, where no, it's not so much a static resource, but it's your ability to use those resources. It's the knowledge you have, and so on. I think we're now at a point where the only true core competency of an organization is its strategic competence, which is its ability to basically to reinvent itself, to transform itself, and at the same time kind of keep building on what is there. So one of the dimensions in our model is stabilizing versus transforming. And I think that skill is being able to build on the past, but also change for the future is an essential skill for individuals, because everyone needs this in their own job, because the world is not changing just for organizations, but also for teams and also for individuals. Every job, I think every person that's working on this planet has the responsibility to think about, where is my job moving?
Yeah.
And AI is a big factor, but not the only one. There's all kind of other changes in the world happening, big transformations that will make sure that the future is different. So being prepared, we can't predict, but some of the skills relate to being aware of what's happening. So what the exercise you did is a very good one there. It's kind of thinking about possible futures.
Yeah.
Like, where could this go? And of course you don't know the answer, but it makes you sensitive. And once again, it makes you aware of the opportunities, of the signs you need to look at. So once the world is moving in a certain direction, AI is moving in a certain direction, you will recognize it. You'll not be among the early ones recognizing it. And then you need the skills to seize those opportunities, to think bold, to take risk, to understand how you bring others on board. So that competency, I think that's the answer. The long-term answer is moving from strategy to strategizing. So from a noun to a verb. I think that's what many companies still need to learn. And then that's really what we focus on.
So basically what you're saying is, instead of just sitting on this thing and thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it, the action itself is worth 100 times the thought. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
No, the thinking and the action, because that's actually the second dimension of a model, thinking and doing, but on a continuous basis. That you make this a competence, a skill, a habit, a routine, that thinking about the future and acting accordingly and balancing this stabilizing and transformation is something you do like at a daily basis and at every level in an organization. I think only then can you be truly strategic and prepared for the future, whatever the future will be.
Yeah.
Because it's a way you're systematically prepared for an uncertain future.
Yeah, it's I would be lying if I said that it doesn't worry me. I think things are changing faster than ever, and I genuinely think that like the best skill anyone can have right now, no matter what your experience is or your expertise is, your best skill you have today is your ability to continue learning and continue to learn new tools and skills and ways to do your job better every single day.
Oh, yes.
It's right. It's like what you knew yesterday. Great. You were an expert until yesterday. Tomorrow's a brand new day.
Yeah. And actually, we've conducted the research I mentioned is exactly on this, and that's actually one of the important results. So, spoiler alert here. So we have 5 competency. One is grasp the present, so that's understanding where you are, what's happening, and so on. Second, shape the future. So that's more the bold thinking, the innovation. Third, move the system. That's more so change management, helping others change their behavior, their mindset, and so on. Fourth, it's deliver the results. It's more action planning and project management. And fifth, it's adapt to change, which is change your resources, change your goals, learn, be resilient, and so on. The research we've done, we've tested like which of these 5 has most effect on career success. And adaptability, so the adapt competence clearly had the most effect. So that exactly confirms what you're saying. It's not just intuitive, but our research shows that it's actually also what not just we haven't looked yet at what explains the success of an organization.
Yeah.
But at the individual level. So we looked at subjective career success. So how do people look at their career, how successful they find their own career?
Yeah.
There's a very strong effect of those who are more adaptable have more successful careers.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess one of the questions I have is that you've been in strategy for so long, well over 20 years at this point. Do you find that like the pace at which strategy needs to be implemented is increasing as well with just the shift of change? Like when you got into this career many, many, many years ago, what were companies needing to change as rapidly as they need to today?
Maybe not, but at the same time, and I'm always a bit stoic, maybe perhaps in this, or skeptic, is the fact that everyone is saying the world is moving faster than ever doesn't necessarily make it true. And just to, if you put it in perspective and look back 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, 2,000, 5,000 years, it's a common theme that at every point in time of the recorded history, people felt the world is moving faster than ever before. So I think it may be, but it's also good to be aware that this feeling is something kind of human.
Yeah. Okay.
So that people, and that's what I said. The articles in long range planning, which was by then the only kind of scientific article on strategy.
Yeah.
The titles there are exactly like, oh my God, the world is changing so fast. Everything is so disrupted. Everything is so uncertain. We need to do strategy differently. That's 50 years ago, half a century ago.
Wow.
And kind of that's always my perspective. I'm not saying the world is not changing, not even, and it's changing fast. But in many respects, it was also changing fast half a century ago.
Yes.
And at the same time, we have much better tools, much better information. We're much better equipped to deal with the complexity, to deal with the change, to deal with the uncertainty. So our capacity to handle the uncertainty has also co-evolved with the uncertainty. So in that sense, we're kind of, we always maybe stay on the same kind of balanced level where what we can do and the uncertainty we face are kind of in balance.
I love that. Thank you. Because I'm not going to lie, I was starting to get a little bit worried that the pace of change was definitely outpacing, most entrepreneurs' ability to try to keep up with it. Because, even since I'm a relatively new entrepreneur, I've only been in the game for 5 years myself. But even in those 5 years, it's like, holy cow, like every year it feels like you're reinventing the process, reinventing the service, reinventing the podcast, whatever. It feels like it's the changes happening so rapidly that it's kind of nice to have someone like you step in and be like, you know what,
but
maybe
at the same
it's
time,
not as bad. Maybe that's normal.
But at the same time, this is a podcast. It's a conversation between two people.
That's right.
That's what a podcast or many podcasts have been always, and even like interviews on the radio. So what's the real difference?
True.
There's differences in nuances, and of course, in some cases there are radical differences. But I think having this kind of stoic mindset, okay, let's not worry too much, put things in perspective, look at the bigger picture, because if you kind of zoom out enough, what's the relevance of this anyway?
Yeah.
So nuanced thinking, I think we need more of that, kind of more stable minds who do not just jump on every trend and are not getting anxious because of the changes.
Yeah.
There always have been changes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if we can talk to podcasts, right? Like a conversation with you and me, I'm in Canada, you're in the Netherlands. It wouldn't have been done this well 5 years ago. Like the technology is really shrinking the world and bringing, experts like you from the Netherlands to be able to come to Canada and North America and have these exact same super valuable conversations that maybe wouldn't have been as easy to facilitate, or maybe would have needed a broadcast or a major network not 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, and my company wouldn't even exist because I met my co-founder, Tim Teriyaki, through LinkedIn.
Wow.
And I've only met him in real person like a month ago, literally a month ago today, after 1.5 years being in the company. He's Canadian, by the way, as well.
Oh, cool.
Despite the time zone differences, despite the distance. So, of course, technology has made, but that's exactly my point. Technology has made it also much easier to catch up with. Now you can record a podcast and publish it immediately.
Yes.
So the technology allows you to act much faster than in the past.
Absolutely. Lead us into the whole person strategy. I think we got into that really briefly earlier, but I would like to maybe dive a little bit deeper, because how does strategy work, like I said, on an individual level, on an employee level, outside of the executive team? How do we get everybody thinking strategy?
Yeah, for me, those are two questions. The whole person approach means within an individual, making sure we're using the full capacity of us as human beings, and not just one half of our brain, which is the rational analytical part, but use our holistic, intuitive side, use our emotions, use our body, use our complete, all our characteristics as a human being. That's kind of the whole person approach, which I think applies to strategy, to consulting, to every job. Is As an executive, you're not just one half of your brain. You're not just a calculator. You are a full human being. And for a very long time, we've kind of tried to rule most of the human side out of strategy, literally. It needs to be objective. It needs to be quantitative, analytical, predictable. Through the tools, it should be a calculation, and then there should be an objective result.
Yeah.
Which leads to these 60, 70, 80, 90% failures. Because we completely ignore the human side of it. Your strategy is completely human, I would say. Of course, a lot of technological support we can have, and also with AI. But in the end, it's a transformation process, and that involves human beings. Like if you strategize for an organization, the organization changes, and that changes relationships, that changes people's jobs. So there's lots of human sides to that as well. So that's the whole person approach. The other side of it, what you were asking, is like, how do we bring in the whole organization? Part of it is the competence. So we need to make sure that, and sorry for repeating that so often in this podcast,
no,
but
it's
really the core of what I'm currently doing, and then where we see so much need and improvement in any organization. So we need to equip people with the tools and the skills to actually, and teach them that this is actually something important. That even if you're a leader at every level, but also if you're not a leader, you're doing your job, thinking and acting strategically. Just the very fact to realize, to be aware of that, is a very important thing, and help people discover that, help people get the insights in their gaps, in their strength, help them develop that. That's one very important ingredient, because if we do not have the awareness, we do not have the capability to strategize, we can't do anything else.
Yeah.
But that's one aspect of it, building competence at the individual, team, and organizational level. The other aspect, and that's more what I've laid out in my book, The 1 Hour Strategy, which is this short story, which I think you can almost read in 1 hour. It was a simple story, but a complex underlying story.
Yes.
Because the whole idea there is you need to change structures, processes, systems, procedures, governance in an organization to make this work. So we need a mechanism where people let's say professionals or people at the shop floor, can think about their job from a strategic perspective. Have the tools there, have a mechanism, have a process where they meet, where they discuss, where they talk to their manager, and so on. At the manager level, we need the same. We need to make sure that we facilitate conversations on the strategy of their team, of their department, their unit, their division. And at the top level, of course, as well, we need the same conversation, and not just on an incident basis or just ad hoc or every 5 years, but on a continuous basis. So we need a continuous process involving people at every level. And that requires, for instance, that you have a very standardized, structured approach and system with clear definitions, with templates that you can use at every level, so that what you do at the lower levels kind of adds up to what you do at the higher levels. That's the idea you see in the 1 hour strategy, where the 1 hour is the idea that as an executive, you need to spend 1 hour per day, as a manager, 1 hour per week, and as an employee, 1 hour per month. So, of course, it's not equal, but everyone needs to spend time on this. So blocking time for that, reserving time for that is an important requirement, because in most organizations, it's kind of the last thing and the first thing that kind of got cut because it's not immediately urgent. So let's not do it. Let's focus on cost cutting first.
Yeah.
No, you need to kind of build that in systematically. So there is time, there's competence, there's the tools, there's processes. So in the end, that's a big transformation.
Yeah,
and for some companies, it's a big transformation, especially for those who are kind of hierarchical, top-down, traditional. Then it's really kind of it probably requires a new leadership even, because they can't even imagine this way of working.
Yeah.
Some other companies who already have more decentralized structures with autonomous teams or holacracy, any more flexible, decentralized structure is already much, much more ready for this, because the basics in terms of more decentralized, more, let's say, autonomous working, treating people more as adults rather than as slaves or kids that have to be instructed and told what to do, is already in place. So then it's much easier, much less of a transformation. So it really depends on where you stand, how traditional, how hierarchical you are as a company.
Oh, man. Yeah. And I've seen it the other way too, where, like, for instance, a company wants to go through a big change, typically comes from the top, and they almost have to start fresh with a whole new team, because the exact same thing happens, is that the culture was something completely different. The way things were done were completely different. And it would be almost impossible to get the buy-in on this new structure from the current team.
Yeah.
And so I've seen it the other way around. You mentioned the leadership might need to change. I've seen it the other way around, where they're like, okay, well, we need a whole new sales team, because they're not going to do it in this new way that we want. So I've seen it both ways.
Yeah. Yeah, this is an interesting, it's a bit of an older book. I think the English book is Maverick. It's by Ricardo Semler about Semco, which is his story, like when he took the company over from his father. He wanted to kind of radically democratize work, and it has become an example of kind of radical, bottom-up, democratic type of work, where employees choose and evaluate their managers, pick their own wages, decide when they work and when they don't. But doing that required a very almost like dictatorship type of executive who did not want to accept the current way of working, including firing, I think, most of the board. So it requires a very top-down, strong leadership in order to make this happen. Because you'll be facing lots of resistance, especially people who think this cannot be done.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons I wrote this book in a kind of a story form, to help people at least see it, so to make it imaginable. Because if it's not even imaginable, then it will never happen. But if you can kind of see it happen, then all the rest is detail.
Yeah, vision. That's a really good example, because you're absolutely right. Like, from the standpoint of, especially from a top-down strategy, typically that strategy is coming from the CEO or an executive team member of some level, and then they have to sell it to the executive team. And then somehow that executive team needs to paint that vision inside of the employees in order to get them on board with it. How critical is getting that vision out there to making strategy actually happen?
I think it's pretty critical, but the way you will get there is not necessarily the way you describe.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can also do it the engaged way, the involved way, where you do include insights, information, ideas from all layers in the company to make this a collaborative process. I know it's a bit more complex, but again, here it's technology allows us to do this. Without software, we could never do this. Probably even without AI, we could not do it. But now we have all of these tools. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
We can automate so much. We can have, let's say, AI do most of the work. And this is still untested territory where I think the tools helping us to do strategy in the way that I kind of anticipated in this little book most of them still need to be developed or are currently under development, I think, as far as I'm a little bit aware of what's happening. But then why not?
Yeah. No, I agree. I guess from my standpoint, what I'm kind of thinking is, how does a company go about doing that? Because typically an idea for a change comes from the top. So in your mind, would they then pitch that to the team and then start to just get feedback and input on how they could improve that idea or what they're missing? Like, basically what you're kind of saying is, sure, the idea has to come from somewhere, but put that idea out to the organization as a whole, start to get feedback and start to work as a team to execute that idea or maybe something completely different as all of the knowledge starts to roll in.
Yeah. So one of the requirements that I also wrote in the 1 hour strategy is you need to have at least one high-level executive that's strongly convinced that this is the way to go.
Okay.
Because otherwise, it's not going to happen. Because that if a company, if you're just somewhere in the middle and none of the top executives is kind of behind you, go and find another job, I would say. Because it won't happen. Because the forces, the traditional structures are too strong. But if you have one, if there is one, and so the idea does not have to come from the top, but you need very strong support from someone at the top with powerful or with a lot of influence. And then I think once you have that, you don't have to make it a big announcement and then to kind of you can start making changes incrementally. Because who cares if you do things a bit differently at a department? That's even if you are a department leader or you're head of marketing or IT or a business unit or a division. Assuming that within that department, team, or business unit, you do have quite some freedom to do the things the way you are, you want them to do.
Yeah,
you can start there. So have your own little island of, let's say, decentralized strategy with your marketing department, with your HR department. Why not? As long as you do what you need to do, as long as you report what you need to report, as long as you perform how you need to perform, no one will probably stop you in doing it a bit more decentralized. And once that works, you've factually been an effective pilot within the company. And if there are good results, then big chances that people will see it and will do it. So use your kind of local little empires and silos for you, because there you can try things differently. So maybe I have to correct what I just said. It's at the start, you don't need to have full buy-in from someone at the top. As long as you have freedom to do things the way you would like them to do as a leader, within the boundaries, you can just start and be an example. And I think that's very important because people need to see that there are alternatives, that things could be different, that strategy does not have to be this traditional approach. And once they've seen it work within the company as one department, you have a very powerful story to expand and do it somewhere else in the organization.
Yes.
Until at some point of time, if you've tried it at 3 different departments in a business unit, why not make this the approach? So there's kind of some call for activism here. It's like whatever leadership position you are, do things differently.
Is there like a one-size-fits-all strategy playbook that works in all situations, or do they all have to be molded for certain situations? Like, for instance, let's just call like EOS, or like, that's the one that tends to come up quite a bit as people talk about traction and the EOS systems or the OKR systems, right?
Yeah, those are tools. Those are tools. And whether it's OKR, OGSM, or the X Matrix, or any of these others, I don't mind. All of them can work because all of them depend, again, on competence, on structure, on process. and how exactly you use them, whether you call it OKR or a balanced scorecard, you can make it work. Yeah. So the way I look at this is much more principles and more just higher levels of abstraction. It's the way of thinking and structuring a company. And then all these other things are tools. Many of them can be used. Some of them may be a bit better than others. But let's not get stuck into you need to use OKRs because OKRs is best. It's just a simple tool. If you use OGSM, that may just be as effective because in the end, what they do is find some way to cascade from a high level objective to a lower level, more specific objective. And whether you call it an objective, a key result, a target, a goal, who cares?
Yeah. No, I just wondered because ultimately, I've been at organizations where like OKRs are the way to go. This is the way we're going to do this, right? But
Let's
once
stick
again,
with OKRs. Yeah. But use it. You can use OKRs perfectly with what I just described.
Yes. No, I understand. Yeah, I guess it's just one of those things that I think we all struggle with executing on strategy, right? I think that's pretty universal across probably nearly every organization around the world. So I appreciate your insights into that. I guess one of the questions that I had before we lead a little bit more into Strategy Inc. is, you've worked with leaders around the world, specifically with strategy and execution. What separates a good strategy leader from an exceptional one?
Good question. The first thing that comes to mind, I think, is open-mindedness. And that in the broader sense of the word is being open to critique, open to feedback, open to alternatives, open to learning. And I think the great leaders I've worked with were modest, open, assuming they were students rather than teachers, not the know-it-all type of person. So I think you can be still a good leader if you are more of the other type. But I think the great leaders are much more learning students, open, willing to admit that they were wrong. I think that's for me, not just as a leader, but also as a person.
Yeah.
I think the difference between a good person and a great person.
I love it. Yeah. Be willing to know that you don't have all the answers. I find myself there all the time. So I appreciate that. No. And like I said, even if you're an expert in something, I truly believe at the rate things are changing, at the rate things are transitioning and advancing, you're really only an expert until yesterday. Tomorrow's a brand new day. I like to say that. And you got to keep learning. It's really the thing that keeps us keen, keeps us sharp, keeps us on top of things. Yeah, the moment you stop learning, you're dead in the water.
Yeah, that's the whole evolution of nature as well. It's evolution. We need to adapt. We need to learn. We need to continuously reinvent ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. Jeroen, it's been absolutely my pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you for joining us. Please do, before we wrap up today, though, lead us into Strategy Inc. Talk about what it is. I know you did briefly at the beginning, but let's dive a little bit deeper into it. Who is it for? What organizations? And then we could also chat about your latest book as well.
Yeah, Strategy Inc. Of course, we're a startup company with currently, I think, already quite a lot of traction because we were propelling a new human-centered approach to strategy. And 3 pillars. One of them is certification. So training other people, coaches and consultants, help them become better consultants, become better coaches with their clients. 2 is the consulting. We do our own consulting, but also through the training we've done, we have a network of consultants who are all trained in the same kind of mindset and way of working, knowing the same tools. So that gives us quite some coverage over the globe. And the 3rd is what we call the strategy as a competency, which is what I've been talking about a lot, which closely relates to certification and also consulting, but it's much more. It's not for experts, it's not for consultants and coaches, but it's for individuals. And individuals, teams, organizations, so for everyone. So our focus on competence building throughout organizations. So that's the 3 things we do. We're a global startup. Our founders, I'm located in the Netherlands, and my co-founder as Canadian. Yeah, and we're really having very international groups of clients.
Amazing. And Jeroen, if they want to get a hold of you to book one of these sessions or to just get in touch, what is the best way for them to do so?
Probably LinkedIn. If you type my name correctly wherever, whether it's LinkedIn or Google, that's me, because there's just one Jeroen Kraaijenbrink that's spelled like this.
That's unique.
Which is the advantage of a name that no one can pronounce. It's a unique name. So if you query me, send me a connection request, send me a message on LinkedIn. I think that's the easiest way. And of course, otherwise go to strategy.inc, fill out the contact form, reach out to us, and it will end up with me as well.
Amazing. And, we mentioned it ahead of the show, but, many books, 7 books at this time that you've authored or co-authored. Please take us in briefly to the 1 hour strategy.
Yeah. Or of course, I've already mentioned a little bit about this. It's a short story about Martin, a fictitious character who's joining a new company. And why is he joining? Because this company has this strange, unique, amazing way of doing strategy, which is the 1 hour strategy approach. So what you'll learn in the book is, through the eyes of Martin, kind of talking to different people at the company, how this company does strategy. Which is kind of an odd way because it involves everyone. It actually means people at the shop floor spend time on strategy, not to think about the whole company, but to think about their job, their department. There's a couple of tools in there, simple tools. One of them is what I call the 6M model, which is a simple template with six elements that you can use to describe, analyze, design strategy for your team, your department, your organization. Yeah, and of course, lots of exciting takeaways there. And since a month or two, I think there's an audiobook. There's an audio version. So
Amazing.
If you don't like reading, and I assume lots of people like listening, if they're listening to this podcast, there's an audiobook, beautifully narrated, which is a fascinating experience to have someone else, a professional, narrating your own book. It feels kind of, did I write this? So I can recommend the audiobook as well, and it's probably available through all the normal channels.
Amazing. Perfect. If you're hearing this, the link to probably the Amazon book as well as the audiobook will be in the links, as well as a link for Strategy Inc. Jeroen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today. Thanks for joining us.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for asking all those interesting questions.
My pleasure. Until next time, you've been listening to the Business Development Podcast, and we will catch you on the flip side.
This has been the Business Development Podcast with Kelly Kennedy. Kelly has 15 years in sales and business development experience within the Alberta oil and gas industry and founded his own business development firm in 2020. His passion and his specialization is in customer relationship generation and business development. The show is brought to you by Capital Business Development, your business development specialists. For more, we invite you to the website at www.capitalbd.ca. See you next time on the Business Development Podcast.
Imagine pulling into your garage and watching your car disappear into the floor or rise into view like something straight out of a movie. That's what Atlas Elite Lifts delivers. Atlas creates stunning car lift systems designed for luxury homes, high-end condominiums, premium dealerships, and commercial spaces where design matters. These systems are not just engineered for performance. They're designed to become part of the architecture itself. And honestly, it's something you have to see to believe. So beautiful, it's Batcave ready. Visit www.atlaselitelifts.com today.